Welcome! Today we're diving into a really powerful visual language. It's all about bringing some much-needed order to one of the most chaotic parts of any business. You know, how work actually gets done.
I mean, on the surface, they seem totally different, right? But the answer is actually pretty simple. They're all processes. Every single one is just a series of steps, decisions, and actions that get you from point A to a specific outcome.
And that, right there, that brings us to the core problem we're talking about today. See, businesses are literally built on processes. But as they get bigger, those processes can turn into this tangled, confusing mess. And that just leads to chaos. Come on, we've all been there, right? On the left, that's the plan, at least how it exists in someone's head. A total web of arrows and sticky notes. But on the right, that's the clarity we're all desperately trying to get to. And that gap, that huge difference between the two, that is exactly the problem that BPMN, or Business Process Model and Notation, was built to solve.
You know, the real issue here is just communication. The business folks describe a workflow one way, the developers hear it another way, and of course management has their own completely different take. It's kind of like trying to build a house when everyone's working from a different set of blueprints. It's just not going to work.
So, the big question is, how do we get everyone on the same page? Well, we need a shared language, a simple, standardized way to map out exactly what's happening one step at a time.
And yep, you guessed it, that language is BPMN. The best way to think about it is like musical notation. Any trained musician, doesn't matter where they are in the world, can look at a sheet of music and know exactly how to play that song. BPMN does the exact same thing, but for business processes. It's a truly universal standard.
And you know, this didn't just appear out of nowhere. The whole goal, according to the group that created the standard, was to take all the best ideas from all the different flowcharting methods floating around and mash them together into one single, super powerful notation.
All right, so like any language, BPMN has its own basic grammar. But hey, don't worry, it's actually surprisingly simple. It's really just built on a handful of core shapes. Let's take a look.
Okay, first up, we've got the event. That's the circle. An event is basically a trigger. It's the when of the process. It's the thing that kicks everything off, like say, a customer places an order. Or it can be what signifies the end, like that order getting delivered. Next up, the activity. That's your rounded rectangle. Now this guy is the real workhorse of BPMN. An activity is the what. It's the actual task that's being performed. You know, things like check inventory, or approve application, or my favorite, prepare pizza. It's all about the action.
And rounding out our top three, we have the gateway, the diamond shape. You can think of this as the brain of the whole operation. It controls the which way of the process. It's all about making decisions. So, if a credit check passes, the process goes one way. If it fails, it goes another. Gateways are basically the traffic cops of your workflow.
Okay, so now we've got our basic grammar down. Events, activities, and gateways. With just these three things, we can start combining them to tell a really clear story about how a process actually works, with no room for confusion.
But wait, before we build our story, we need to know who the characters are, right? In BPMN, we use something called swim lanes for that. A pool represents a major participant, think customer or doctor's office. Then, inside a pool, you can have lanes to separate activities by role, like receptionist or doctor. It just gives us the context of who is doing what.
So let's build a quick little story. It all starts with an event. A patient feels sick. That then triggers an activity. They send a request to the doctor's office. Now look at the lines connecting them. That solid arrow, that's a sequence flow. And it just shows the order of the steps. The dashed arrow is called a message flow, and it shows communication between different people. In this case, between the patient and the doctor's office. Okay, this is great for a simple, straight line. But let's be real, life is rarely that straightforward. So what happens next? Does the patient get a prescription or not? This is where our process needs to be able to branch out. And this is exactly where that gateway we talked about comes into play. After an activity like, say, handle symptoms, we can pop in a gateway. This diamond basically asks a question, and depending on the answer, it points the process down one path or another. It's how we build real logic and actual decisions right into our map.
So we've learned the basic grammar, we've seen how to build a simple story, but you might be thinking, why go through all this trouble? Why do these diagrams actually matter out there in the real world?
Well, because it's about so much more than just drawing pretty pictures. This common language finally bridges that huge gap between the business side and the IT side. It gives everyone a crystal clear way to analyze the process, find the bottlenecks, and even create a blueprint for automation.
And maybe most importantly, it gets rid of all that ambiguity that leads to deadlocks. When everyone's just sitting around waiting for someone else to do something.
When you get right down to it, BPMN is a tool for transformation. It takes those chaotic, messy ideas we saw at the very beginning and turns them into clear, actionable plans. Plans that everyone can actually understand, follow, and, best of all, improve on. It truly does bring order to the chaos.
So there you have it. You now have the basics of this really powerful language. The only question left is, what broken process are you going to fix first? Thanks for joining me.